At my brother's promotion party he raised a toast. My sister got fired again. Maybe stick to stripping. Our dad chuckled. At least she's good at that. The crowd's laughter froze when the CEO walked in, eyes locked on me. Ma'am, I need you to pack your personal items now. The security guard's voice was gentle but firm as he stood beside my desk. 20 coworkers pretended to focus on their computers while I fumbled for my coffee mug with shaking hands. This wasn't a performance review or a warning meeting. This was the end. The cardboard box appeared out of nowhere. Karen from HR materialized beside me with that practiced sympathy face she probably learned in corporate training. Take your time, she said, but her foot was already tapping. The clock on my computer screen read 10:23 a.m. I'd been fired exactly 37 minutes into my Tuesday. My fingers moved automatically. Coffee mug first. The one that said world's okayest employee, a gift from my college roommate. Then the small succulent I'd nursed back to health over 6 months. Its tiny leaves finally bright green after arriving half dead from the office supply catalog. My business cards went in next, still warm from the printer. Willow Hayes, Senior Systems Analyst. I'd been so proud of that title. Before we continue, I want to thank you for joining me in sharing stories about women who refuse to stay silent. If you believe that competence should matter more than family favoritism, please consider subscribing. It's free and helps us reach more women who need to hear this. Now let's see how this unfolds. The photo frame was the hardest part. Mom and me at my college graduation, both of us grinning like we'd conquered the world. She died 2 years later, never getting to see me land this job, never knowing how Harrison himself had shaken my hand on my first day and said, "We need more people like you around here." Miss Hayes. The security guard's voice pulled me back. I realized I'd been staring at the photo for too long. Everyone was watching now, not even pretending to work anymore. Sarah from accounting had her hand over her mouth. Tom from IT kept glancing between me and his monitor like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. I couldn't blame them. I'd been the reliable one. The person who stayed late to fix everyone's problems, who brought birthday cakes for coworkers I barely knew, who volunteered for the projects nobody wanted. I'd never been written up, never missed a deadline, never given them a reason to doubt me. But that was the story of my life, wasn't it? Being perfect had never been enough. Growing up, I was the daughter who followed every rule. Color-coded homework planners in elementary school. Perfect attendance awards displayed on the refrigerator. National Honor Society certificate framed in the hallway. While Finn was getting suspended for starting food fights, I was tutoring struggling classmates for free. The first crack in my golden daughter facade came during senior year. Finn had cheated on his SATs. Not well, mind you, just enough to scrape into community college. Instead of consequences, Dad bought him a brand new truck. He needs encouragement, Dad explained when I asked why my perfect scores only earned me a pat on the head. I'd earned a full scholarship to State University, graduated summa cum laude with a degree in computer science, and landed 3 job offers before graduation. Dad's response? That's nice, sweetheart. Your brother's thinking about maybe transferring to a 4-year school next semester. Maybe thinking about next semester. Those became the words that defined Finn's existence while I was actually achieving things. But Harrison Technology was different. Here results mattered more than family politics. When I solved the server crash that would have cost us our biggest client, Harrison himself came to thank me. When I designed the security protocol that saved the company from a data breach, I got a raise and a promotion. For 3 years I'd felt valued. I'd worked 60-hour weeks gladly because every project was a chance to prove myself. Every solved problem was evidence that I belonged here. I'd found my place in the world and it felt incredible. I never talked about my successes at family dinners. Not because I was modest, but because I'd learned that my achievements made everyone uncomfortable. When I mentioned my promotion to senior analyst, Finn had rolled his eyes and said, "Must be nice having a boss who likes you." Dad had chuckled and changed the subject to Finn's new girlfriend. They had a way of making my victories feel small. When I bought my first car with my own money, Finn joked that I was showing off. When I moved into my own apartment, Dad wondered aloud why I was in such a hurry to leave the family. Every milestone became a reason for me to feel guilty instead of proud. The irony wasn't lost on me now, sitting in my car in the parking garage with a box of personal items in my lap. The job that had finally made me feel worthy was gone, and I hadn't even been given a reason why. Just a form letter about restructuring, and a security escort to make sure I didn't steal any staplers on my way out. My phone buzzed with a text from Dad. "How's work going, sweetheart?" I stared at it for a long time before typing back, "I got fired." His response came back in 30 seconds. A thumbs up emoji. Not "what happened," or "are you okay?" Just a thumbs up like I told him about the weather. Then Finn's text arrived. No words, just a gif of a woman dancing around a pole with laughing crying face emojis. He'd managed to turn my professional devastation into a joke before I'd even processed what happened to me. I sat in that parking garage for an hour watching people stream in and out of the building where I used to belong. The rational part of my brain knew I needed to update my resume, start making calls, begin the job search process. But a deeper part of me, the part that had been collecting small hurts and dismissals for 28 years, was finally waking up. This wasn't just about losing a job. This was about a lifetime of being the golden daughter who was never quite golden enough. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't planning to smile and try harder. I was planning to find out exactly why I'd been thrown away. 2 weeks of unemployment had turned my apartment into a fortress of self-pity. Empty coffee cups lined my kitchen counter. My laptop sat unopened on the dining table, and I'd worn the same pajama pants for 3 days straight. The routine was simple. Wake up, check job boards, feel overwhelmed, order takeout, repeat. Then the invitation slid under my door like a knife. Heavy cardstock paper with gold-trimmed edges. The kind Dad always insisted on for important family events. My name was written in elegant calligraphy across the envelope. Miss Willow Hayes. Not beloved daughter, or even just Willow. Miss Hayes, like I was a distant acquaintance being invited out of obligation. I tore it open with my thumbnail, already knowing what I'd find inside. Join us in celebrating Finn's promotion to executive director at Morrison & Associates. The date was set for this Saturday. The location was the country club where Dad held all his business events. Dress code, formal. No mention of my recent firing. No acknowledgement that 2 weeks ago, I'd lost everything while apparently Finn was climbing corporate ladders. Just a cheerful invitation to celebrate the golden boy's latest achievement. I threw the invitation on my coffee table and stared at it for 20 minutes. Executive Director. Finn couldn't spell, definitely, without autocorrect. And somehow he'd landed a position that would have taken me years to reach. The same Finn who'd cheated his way through college was now making 6 figures while I was rationing ramen noodles. My phone rang at exactly 6:30 p.m. Unknown number, but something made me answer. "Willow, this is Harrison." His voice sounded different, strained, almost whispered. "We need to talk. In person. Tonight." "Mr. Harrison, I don't think that's..." "Please. There's something you need to know about why you were fired. Something about your brother." The coffee shop he chose was across town, the kind of place where nobody from our industry would accidentally show up. Harrison was already there when I arrived, hunched over a corner table with his back to the wall. He looked older than I remembered, with dark circles under his eyes and a nervous energy that made my stomach clench. "Thank you for coming," he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. "I wasn't sure you would." "What's this about, Mr. Harrison? If you're feeling guilty about firing me..." "I didn't fire you." The words came out flat, definitive. "I was forced to let you go." I felt my face flush. "Forced by who?" He pulled out his phone and slid it across the table. On the screen was a photo, grainy but clear enough. A younger Harrison at what looked like a college party, arm around a girl who couldn't have been more than 17. Both of them holding red cups, both clearly intoxicated. "This was 25 years ago," he said quietly. "A party at my fraternity. That girl was my girlfriend's younger sister visiting for the weekend. Nothing happened, we were just talking, just posing for pictures. But without context." I stared at the photo, understanding creeping over me slowly. "Someone threatened you with this." "Your brother." Harrison's voice was barely audible. "He showed up at my office 3 weeks ago with this photo and a fabricated report claiming I'd been inappropriate with female employees. Said he'd go to the media, the board, my wife if I didn't clean house." The coffee shop suddenly felt too hot. "Clean house? Fire you? Specifically you?" Harrison met my eyes. "He said you were getting too comfortable in your position, that you might start expecting promotions you hadn't earned. He wanted you gone before you could become a threat to his own career prospects." My hands were shaking now. His career prospects. Finn doesn't even work at your company. He's been networking. Apparently he's friends with some of our board members' sons. Golf buddies, I think. He mentioned wanting to apply for positions in our industry, said having a sister in senior management might create conflicts of interest. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Finn hadn't just destroyed my career, he'd planned it, calculated it, used fabricated evidence to force my boss into firing me, all so he could pursue opportunities in my field without having to compete with his more qualified sister. Why are you telling me this now? I asked. Harrison leaned forward. Because I found out the photo was doctored. The girl in the picture, I tracked her down. She's 38 now, married with 3 kids. She confirmed the party was a college event, that she was 21 at the time. Your brother had digitally altered her appearance to make her look younger. You have proof. Enough to bury him. Harrison pulled the phone back. The question is, what do you want to do about it? I thought about the invitation sitting on my coffee table. About Finn's smug face when he'd sent me that stripper gif. About Dad's thumbs up emoji when I told him I was fired. About 28 years of being treated like my achievements didn't matter. I want my job back, I said. Done. You can start Monday if you want. Harrison paused. But I get the feeling you want something more than just your job back. He was right. Something was crystallizing in my mind. Not revenge exactly, but justice. Finn thought he was untouchable because he'd always been Dad's favorite, because he'd learned to charm his way out of consequences. He'd counted on me being too nice, too passive, too much of a good girl to fight back. The promotion party, I said. Will you be there? Harrison's eyebrows raised. Your father invited the entire Morrison and Associates board. It's supposed to be a networking event disguised as a family celebration. Perfect. A room full of the people Finn wanted to impress, the connections he was counting on to build his career. The same career he'd destroyed mine to protect. I stood up from the table. Mr. Harrison, I'll see you Saturday night. Willow, what are you planning? I smiled for the first time in 2 weeks. I'm planning to show my family exactly who they've been underestimating. When I got home, I picked up the invitation and found my phone. The RSVP line went straight to Dad's assistant. This is Willow Hayes, I said. I'll be attending Finn's promotion party. Please mark me down as a +1. Oh, wonderful. Your father will be so pleased. Any dietary restrictions? Just one, I said, staring at my reflection in the dark window. I don't swallow lies anymore. Dad's text came an hour later. So glad you're coming, sweetheart. Wear something modest this time. Lots of important people will be there. I typed back, don't worry, Dad. I'll wear exactly what the occasion calls for. For the first time since that security guard had appeared at my desk, I felt like myself again. Monday morning arrived with the strangest feeling. Walking back into Harrison Technology through the same glass doors that had ejected me 3 weeks earlier. But this time I wasn't Willow Hayes, senior systems analyst. I was a ghost. Harrison had set up my new workspace in the basement archives, a cramped room filled with outdated servers and boxes of old financial records. Officially, you're a contract consultant reviewing our data security protocols, he explained, handing me a keycard with no photo. Unofficially, you have access to everything. The setup was perfect. Nobody questioned a contractor poking around old files. Nobody looked twice at the woman in jeans and sneakers carrying boxes of documents to her car. I was invisible again, but this time by choice. I started with Morrison and Associates public filings, the company where Finn had mysteriously landed his executive director position. The numbers didn't add up immediately, but after 3 days of cross-referencing expense reports with client billings, patterns emerged. Finn's first red flag was subtle. A series of consulting payments to a company called Strategic Solutions LLC that didn't seem to exist anywhere except on paper. I traced the business registration to a P.O. box in Delaware, paid for with a credit card that led back to one of Dad's subsidiary accounts. Strategic Solutions had billed Morrison and Associates for $47,000 in market research over the past 6 months. The exact period when Finn had been networking his way into their good graces. My hands were steady as I photographed every document. This wasn't just nepotism, this was fraud. The coffee shop across from Morrison and Associates became my second office. I'd sit by the window with my laptop watching employees come and go, learning their routines. Jennifer from accounting always grabbed lunch at 12:30. Marcus from IT took smoke breaks every hour on the dot. And Finn left for 2-hour client meetings every Tuesday at 3 p.m. Those weren't client meetings. I followed him once, feeling ridiculous and exhilarated at the same time. His client meeting was actually a golf lesson at the country club, paid for with a Morrison & Associates corporate card. The instructor confirmed it when I called, pretending to be from their billing department. "Oh yes, Mr. Hayes' standing appointment," she chirped. "Every Tuesday for the past 4 months. Such a dedicated student. Dedicated to embezzling, maybe. But the golf lessons were small change compared to what I found in the Vegas receipts. Finn had convinced Morrison & Associates to send him to 3 different industry conferences in Las Vegas over the past year. I called each conference organizer. 2 of the conferences didn't exist. The third had been canceled due to low registration, but somehow Finn had spent $8,000 of company money during a week when he was supposedly attending sessions that never happened. The hotel receipts told a different story. Room service charges for 2 people, spa treatments, dinner reservations at restaurants that cost more than most people's rent. Finn hadn't been networking. He'd been living it up on someone else's dime with what appeared to be a rotating cast of companions. Each piece of evidence felt like a small victory, but I needed more than financial irregularities. I needed to understand how deep this corruption went and who else was involved. That's when I met Margaret. She was cleaning Harrison's office one evening when I was pulling late-night archive duty. 60-something with shrewd eyes and the quiet confidence of someone who'd been ignored for so long that people forgot she had ears. "You're the girl who got fired," she said matter-of-factly, emptying the trash can. "I'm a contractor now," I replied carefully. Margaret snorted. "Honey, I've been cleaning offices for 30 years. I know the difference between hired and rehired." She paused, studying my face. "Question is, what are you really doing down here in the basement?" Something about her directness made me decide to trust her. "I'm trying to prove that my brother destroyed my career to cover up his own crimes. The pretty boy who was here a few weeks ago? Throwing around threats and acting like he owned the place." My pulse quickened. "You saw him. Saw him, heard him, cleaned up after his little tantrum when Mr. Harrison wouldn't play ball fast enough." Margaret set down her supplies and leaned against the desk. "He left some interesting papers in the conference room trash. Figured they might be important someday." She reached into her cleaning cart and pulled out a manila folder, slightly wrinkled but intact. Inside were printed emails between Finn and someone named D. Morrison, presumably Dad's contact at Morrison & Associates. The emails were damning. Finn hadn't just blackmailed Harrison. He'd been coordinating with Dad to systematically eliminate me as competition in the industry. They'd identified 3 other companies where I might potentially find work and had begun spreading rumors about my instability and family loyalty issues. "Your brother's not very smart," Margaret observed as I stared at the papers. "Left these sitting right on top like he wanted someone to find them." "Why are you helping me?" I asked. Margaret's expression hardened. "Because 30 years ago I was the smartest accountant in this city. But I was also a single mother who couldn't afford the right clothes or the right connections. Men like your brother, and your father, they've been keeping women like us down for decades. Time someone fought back. He became my most valuable ally." Margaret had access to every office, every computer, every conversation that people thought was private. She brought me security footage of Finn's meetings with Morrison executives, recordings of Dad bragging about handling the Willow situation, and financial documents that painted a clear picture of systematic corruption. But the most valuable thing Margaret gave me was perspective. "You're not just fighting for your job," she said one evening as we organized evidence in the basement. "You're fighting for every woman who's been told she's too emotional, too ambitious, too threatening to the boys' club. Don't just beat them, honey. Destroy the system that created them." The promotion party was now 5 days away. I had 3 boxes of evidence, a dozen witnesses, and a plan that would expose not just Finn's corruption, but the entire network that had protected him. I also had something else. The quiet satisfaction of knowing that while they thought I was broken, I'd been building their destruction from the ground up. Saturday night arrived with unseasonable warmth. The kind of evening that made the country club's outdoor terrace feel like a stage set for wealthy people's theater. I pulled into the circular driveway at exactly 7:20 p.m., 10 minutes early, just as I'd planned. The valet who took my keys did a double take when he recognized me. Word traveled fast in our small social circle. I was the Hayes daughter who'd been fired, the family disappointment who somehow still had the audacity to show up looking composed in a navy blue dress that cost more than most people's car payments. I'd chosen the outfit carefully. Professional enough to command respect, expensive enough to signal I wasn't broken, and conservative enough that Dad couldn't find anything to criticize. Every detail was calculated, from my understated jewelry to the leather portfolio I carried like armor. The country club's main ballroom buzzed with conversation and clinking glasses. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over round tables draped in white linen, each centerpiece a small mountain of roses that probably cost more than I'd spent on groceries in a month. The bar was doing steady business, and I could already spot familiar faces from Morrison and Associates mingling with Dad's usual business associates. Finn held court near the windows, his face flushed with alcohol and attention. Even from across the room I could see he was already 3 drinks past professional. His laugh was too loud, his gestures too broad, his confidence inflated by the admiration of men who saw dollar signs when they looked at him. "Didn't think you'd show, sweetheart." Dad appeared beside me with his trademark smirk, the same expression he'd worn when I was 12 and had accidentally broken his golf trophy. No pole on this stage. The men around him chuckled on cue, corporate executives who'd built careers on knowing when to laugh at the boss's jokes. I recognized most of them, board members from various companies, partners from law firms, the kind of men who made decisions about other people's futures over 18-hole golf games. "Hello, Dad," I said, accepting the champagne flute a server offered. "Lovely party. Well, it's not every day your son becomes an executive director." His chest puffed with pride that had never been directed at me. Finn's really found his calling. Natural leadership, you know. I sipped my champagne and nodded, scanning the room for Harrison. He hadn't arrived yet, but I could see several people from my former company scattered throughout the crowd. Some avoided my gaze entirely, probably uncomfortable about witnessing my professional execution. Others glanced at me with expressions I couldn't quite read: pity, curiosity, or maybe something closer to respect. "You were always too smart to fit in here," a voice said behind me. I turned to find Linda Morrison, one of the senior partners' wives. She was in her 60s, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, with the kind of confidence that came from decades of watching men underestimate women. "Mrs. Morrison," I said, surprised by her directness. "Oh, call me Linda. I've been watching you tonight, dear. You carry yourself differently than the last time I saw you." She studied my face with the intensity of someone who'd learned to read people for survival. Like someone who knows something the rest of us don't. Before I could respond, the sound of feedback from the microphone cut through the conversation. Finn had claimed the small stage at the front of the room, swaying slightly as he adjusted the microphone stand. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, his words slightly slurred but still commanding attention. "Thank you all for celebrating with me tonight. This promotion means everything to me, proof that hard work and dedication really do pay off." The irony wasn't lost on me. I watched Dad beam with pride, watched the Morrison and Associates executives nod approvingly, watched a room full of successful people celebrate a fraud. "To family," Finn continued, raising his champagne glass high. His eyes found mine across the room and his smile turned cruel. "And to my sister, fired again. Maybe she should stick to stripping instead of pretending to be corporate material." The laughter that followed felt like acid in my veins. Not polite chuckles this time, but genuine amusement from people who thought my professional destruction was entertainment. Dad clinked his glass against someone else's, his grin wide enough to show his molars. I didn't move. Didn't flinch. Didn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me crumble. Instead, I looked toward the ballroom entrance and waited. The doors opened at exactly 8:15 p.m. Harrison walked in alone and the shift in the room was immediate. Conversations quieted. Heads turned. The man commanded respect in a way that had nothing to do with inherited wealth or family connections. He'd built his reputation through decades of ethical business practices and genuine leadership. He didn't stop to greet anyone. Didn't pause to shake hands or exchange pleasantries. He walked directly toward the stage with the focused intensity of a man on a mission, carrying a manila folder that seemed to weigh more than paper should. Finn was still at the microphone, basking in the applause from his toast, when Harrison stepped onto the small platform beside him. "Before you all toast Finn," Harrison said, his voice cutting through the remaining chatter without needing amplification, "there's something you should know." The room went completely silent. I could hear my own heartbeat, could sense the collective intake of breath from 200 guests who suddenly realized they were about to witness something unprecedented. Harrison opened the folder in his hands, and I saw Finn's face drain of color as he recognized some of the documents inside. "You blackmailed me, Finn," Harrison continued, his voice steady and clear. "You forged documents, manipulated evidence, and destroyed your sister's career to protect your own fraudulent activities." The silence stretched like a held breath. I watched Dad's champagne glass freeze halfway to his lips, watched the Morrison and Associates executives exchange panicked glances, watched Finn's mouth open and close without producing sound. Then Harrison turned toward me, his eyes finding mine across the frozen crowd. "Willow," he said, extending the folder in my direction, "would you like to do the honors?" My hands were perfectly steady as I walked toward the stage. The folder felt weightless in my hands as I climbed the 3 steps to the stage. 200 pairs of eyes tracked my movement, but I could only focus on Finn's face. The way his confident smirk was melting into something closer to panic. I opened the folder deliberately, letting the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable. The first document I pulled out was a photocopy of a Morrison and Associates expense report, Finn's signature bold across the bottom, authorizing $8,000 for a Vegas conference that never existed. "This is interesting," I said, my voice carrying clearly without the microphone. "A business trip to attend the Southwest Technology Summit last March. Except when I called the organizers, they told me the event was canceled due to lack of interest." I held up the hotel receipt attached to the expense report. But somehow Finn still managed to spend company money on a week-long stay at the Bellagio, including room service for 2 and spa treatments that cost more than most people's monthly salary. The first murmur rippled through the crowd. I saw several Morrison and Associates executives exchanging glances, their faces tight with the realization that their golden boy might not be so golden after all. "Wait," Finn said, reaching for the microphone. There's an explanation for." "There's more," I interrupted, pulling out the next document. Strategic Solutions LLC. A consulting company that billed Morrison and Associates $47,000 for market research over the past 6 months. I looked directly at Dad, whose champagne glass had gone completely still in his hand. "The company is registered to a Delaware P.O. box, paid for with a credit card linked to one of Elijah Hayes' subsidiary accounts. Strategic Solutions doesn't have employees, doesn't have an office, and doesn't have any actual work product to show for nearly $50,000 in billing." The silence was deafening now. I could see people pulling out their phones, probably texting their lawyers or their wives or their business partners. This wasn't just a family drama anymore. This was a corporate scandal unfolding in real time. Dad finally found his voice. "Willow, I don't know what kind of lies you've—" "I'm not finished," I said, and something in my tone made him close his mouth. "The fabricated evidence against Harrison Technologies CEO. The doctored photograph designed to look like inappropriate conduct with a minor. The systematic campaign to destroy my reputation at other companies in the industry." I pulled out a printed email chain and held it up for the room to see. "These are communications between Finn Hayes and David Morrison, planning my professional destruction to eliminate me as competition. They identified 3 companies where I might find employment and began spreading rumors about my mental stability and family loyalty. David Morrison, a distinguished man in his 60s who sat at one of the front tables, had gone completely pale. His wife was staring at him with an expression that suggested this conversation would continue at home. "You want to know why I was really fired?" I continued, making eye contact with people throughout the room. "Because I was getting too good at my job. Because I might expect promotions I hadn't earned. Because having a competent woman in senior management might create conflicts of interest when Finn decided to pursue opportunities in my field." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. I watched Linda Morrison lean over to whisper something urgent in her husband's ear, watched several other wives do the same thing at their respective tables. Finn made one last desperate grab for control. "This is ridiculous," he said, his voice cracking slightly. "She's clearly having some kind of breakdown. Everyone knows she's been unstable since she got fired." "Finn." Harrison's voice cut through his protests like a blade. "You're terminated. Effective immediately." The words hung in the air for a moment before their full impact hit. I reached into the folder one more time and pulled out an official termination letter, printed on Morrison and Associates letterhead. "Signed with your own signature stamp," I said, handing him the document. "The same stamp you used to authorize fraudulent expense reports. Consider it poetic justice." Finn's face turned the exact color of the red wine that someone had spilled on the white tablecloth nearby. His hands shook as he took the letter, and I watched 28 years of arrogance crumble in real time. But I wasn't done. "There's one more vote that was taken today," Harrison announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the ballroom. "The Morrison and Associates Board of Directors held an emergency meeting this afternoon. Elijah Hayes has been removed from his position as chairman, effective immediately." Dad's champagne glass finally slipped from his fingers, shattering on the marble floor with a sound like a gunshot. "The motion passed by a single vote," Harrison continued. "The deciding vote was cast by the newest member of the board, someone who was unanimously approved this morning based on her extensive experience in corporate systems analysis and her demonstrated commitment to ethical business practices." Every eye in the room turned to me. I felt a strange calm settle over my shoulders, like putting on a coat that finally fit properly. "You cast the deciding vote?" Dad's voice was barely above a whisper. I looked at him, really looked at him, for what felt like the first time in years. The man who had dismissed my achievements, laughed at my humiliation, and actively participated in destroying my career. "You taught me this game, Dad," I said quietly. "You just never expected me to play it better than you." Security appeared at the edge of the crowd, not dramatically, but with the quiet efficiency of professionals who had been briefed on the situation. 2 men in dark suits waiting for their cue. Finn was still staring at his termination letter when they approached. "This isn't over," he said, but his voice had lost all its earlier confidence. "You can't just—" "Actually we can," Harrison said. "And we have. Security will escort you both out." As they were led away, Finn protesting loudly about betrayal and lawsuits, Dad maintaining his dignity even as his world collapsed, something extraordinary happened. Someone started clapping. It was Linda Morrison, her gloved hands coming together in slow, deliberate applause. Then her husband joined her, despite everything. Then the woman at the next table. Then more. Within 30 seconds half the room was applauding. Not the polite golf clap of social obligation, but genuine appreciation for what they'd just witnessed. I raised my champagne glass toward the crowd, feeling lighter than I had in months. "To family," I said, echoing Finn's earlier toast, "and finally being good at something." The laughter that followed wasn't cruel this time. It was cathartic, relieved, almost celebratory. I had become the story they thought they were writing, but with an ending none of them had seen coming. The applause was still ringing in my ears when I finally made it home that night, my heels clicking against the marble lobby of my apartment building with a different rhythm than usual. Confidence maybe. Or just the sound of someone who no longer had to apologize for taking up space. I poured myself a glass of wine, the expensive bottle I'd been saving for some theoretical future celebration, and sat on my couch still wearing my navy dress, still processing what had just happened. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from people who'd been at the party, but I ignored them all. This moment belonged to me alone. Morning came with unusual clarity. No grogginess, no existential dread, no checking my phone for job listings. For the first time in months, I woke up knowing exactly where I was supposed to be. Harrison had texted at 6 a.m., board meeting at 8. "Big changes coming. Hope you're ready." I was more than ready. The Harrison Technology lobby looked the same as always. Polished marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows, the subtle hum of success in the air. But something felt different when I walked through those glass doors. The security guard who had escorted me out weeks ago nodded respectfully. The receptionist who had avoided eye contact during my termination looked up with genuine warmth. "Good morning, Ms. Hayes," she said, and I realized I'd never actually learned her name during my previous 3 years here. "Good morning, Rachel," I replied, reading her nameplate. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" Her smile widened. The most beautiful I've seen in months. The executive floor buzzed with unusual energy. Staff members I'd worked with before offered quiet congratulations as I passed. Some seemed genuinely happy for me. Others looked nervous, probably wondering if my return meant their own positions were in jeopardy. Harrison was waiting in the boardroom with several other executives I recognized from the previous night's festivities. The atmosphere was businesslike but warm, with an undercurrent of excitement that felt infectious. "Willow," Harrison said, standing as I entered. "I'd like you to meet your new team." The introductions blurred together. Vice presidents of various departments, senior managers, people whose names I'd seen on company directories but had never worked with directly. What struck me wasn't their credentials but their expressions. These weren't people going through the motions of corporate politeness. They looked genuinely interested in what I might bring to the table. "Before we dive into logistics," Harrison said once everyone was seated, "I want to address the elephant in the room. What happened last night wasn't just about exposing corruption at Morrison and Associates. It was about acknowledging that I, had failed to protect one of our most valuable employees." He looked directly at me. "The board unanimously voted to offer you the position of Chief Operating Officer, effective immediately. But more than that, we want to rebuild this company's culture to make sure what happened to you never happens to anyone else." The title hit me like a physical force. Chief Operating Officer. Not just getting my old job back, but a position 3 levels above where I'd started. The kind of role I'd dreamed about but never dared to expect. "What exactly does that mean?" I asked. "It means you're in charge of operations across all departments," said Janet Morrison, Linda Morrison's daughter-in-law, I realized, and apparently a senior executive in her own right. "It means you have the authority to implement the changes you think this company needs. It means we're not just giving you a fancy title, we're giving you the power to use it." An hour later, I stood in front of what was now my office, staring at the brass nameplate that hadn't been there the day before. Sue Willow Hayes. The letters seemed to shimmer under the fluorescent lights. The office itself was impressive. Corner location, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a conference table that could seat 12 people. But what struck me most was the desk. Not the expensive mahogany or the leather chair, but the fact that it was completely empty. A blank slate waiting for me to fill it with my own vision. I called my first all-hands meeting for 2 p.m. The main conference room was packed beyond capacity, with people standing along the walls and others joining virtually from satellite offices. I could see curiosity in their faces, mixed with cautious optimism and in some cases barely concealed anxiety. "I know some of you are wondering what my appointment means for your jobs," I began, deciding to address the fear head-on. "Let me be clear. We're cleaning house, but we're not burning it down. Everyone in this room gets a chance to prove who they really are." The relief was immediate and visible. Shoulders relaxed. People leaned forward instead of back. The energy in the room shifted from defensive to engaged. "What I learned over the past few weeks," I continued, "is that corruption thrives in silence. It grows in the spaces between what we say publicly and what we tolerate privately. We're going to change that." I outlined my vision. Transparent promotion processes, anonymous reporting systems for ethical concerns, regular salary audits to ensure pay equity, and mandatory bias training for all management positions. "This isn't about punishment," I said. "It's about building something better." The questions that followed were thoughtful, challenging, and honest. These people weren't just looking for job security, they wanted to be part of something meaningful. My phone rang 3 times that afternoon. Dad's number appeared twice. I sent both calls to voicemail without listening to the messages, then blocked his number entirely. Finn's email arrived around 4 p.m., a rambling message that started as an apology and devolved into self-justification and accusations. I deleted it without finishing it and set up a filter to automatically delete any future messages from his address. Some ghosts aren't meant to haunt you. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is let them fade into irrelevance. I stayed late on my first day not because I had to but because I wanted to. The building grew quiet around me as people headed home to their families, but I felt energized rather than tired. On my desk I placed a single photograph. Mom and me at my college graduation, both of us grinning like we'd conquered the world. She'd been gone for 6 years now, but I could still hear her voice clearly. "Don't let them convince you that silence is grace, Willow," she'd said during one of our last conversations, when I'd been complaining about a professor who kept dismissing my contributions in class. Sometimes the most graceful thing you can do is refuse to be quiet. I finally understood what she meant. If this story of corporate justice had you cheering Willow on, hit that like button right now. My favorite part was when Willow calmly presented each piece of evidence while Finn's confidence crumbled completely. What was your favorite moment? Drop it in the comments below. Don't miss more empowering stories like this. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload.
I'm Audrey Mitchell, 32, and I built my real estate tech company from scratch, while my family runs Mitchell Real Estate Group. Last month, I arrived at my parents' mansion for our annual family business meeting, excited to share my company's growth. Instead of the conference room, my mother directed me to sit in the kitchen. As I swallowed my humiliation, watching executives file past to the real meeting, my phone buzzed. It was Megan, my assistant, with news that would transform everything. Before I continue with what happened next, let me know where you're watching from and hit subscribe if you've ever been underestimated by the people who should believe in you the most. The Mitchell family name carries weight in Boston's real estate circles. My father, Brian Mitchell, started selling commercial properties in his 20s with nothing but determination and my mother Karen's unwavering support. By the time I was born, they had already established Mitchell Real Estate Group as a formidable presence in New England's commercial property market. Growing up, our family dinners regularly transformed into business discussions. My father would spread papers across the dining table while my mother kept meticulous notes. My older brother Jason, now 38, absorbed every word, groomed since childhood to take over the family legacy. My younger brother Tyler, 28, despite his more relaxed approach to business, was also given significant responsibilities at the company straight out of college. I was different. While I shared the Mitchell business acumen, I saw beyond traditional real estate. During college, I became fascinated with how technology could revolutionize property transactions. My vision was clear: create a platform that streamlined the entire process, from virtual viewings to digital closings. The internet is just a fad in real estate, my father declared when I pitched my idea during my senior year. People will always want the personal touch when making the biggest purchase of their lives. Despite graduating with honors from Wharton with dual degrees in real estate and information systems, my family treated my ambitions as a cute hobby. Jason called my ideas Silicon Valley pipe dreams, while my mother gently suggested I focus on more practical aspects of the business. Only my grandfather Harold, who had stepped back from active management, showed genuine interest. During private conversations on his porch, he would ask thoughtful questions about my digital platform concepts. The business needs new blood and new ideas, he told me once, keeping his voice low as if sharing a secret. But your father has always been resistant to change. That's both his strength and his weakness. With my family unwilling to invest in my vision, I took the unconventional path. I declined the cushy executive position at Mitchell Real Estate and instead worked 3 jobs to save startup capital. I rented a tiny apartment, converted half of it into an office, and launched Mitchell Tech Real Estate with my savings and a small business loan. The first 2 years were brutal. I worked 18-hour days, survived on ramen noodles, and faced constant rejection from investors who couldn't see past my youth and gender. Meanwhile, at every family gathering, I endured subtle digs about my little website experiment and questions about when I would join the real business. The turning point came when I developed a proprietary algorithm that could predict property value trends with remarkable accuracy. Suddenly, investors were interested. My platform began gaining traction with younger homebuyers who preferred virtual tours and digital transactions. Still, my family remained unimpressed. At last year's family business meeting, I proudly shared that Mitchell Tech had facilitated over $50 million in transactions. "That's nice, dear," my mother said with a patronizing smile. Jason closed a $100 million commercial deal last week. What they didn't acknowledge was that Jason had a 40-person team and the full resources of a decades-old company behind him. I had built my success with a team of 12 dedicated employees, led by my assistant Megan Thompson. Megan joined me when my company was nothing but a laptop and a dream. A finance graduate with a sharp mind and unfailing loyalty, she turned down lucrative offers from established firms to take a chance on my vision. "I'd rather build something meaningful than maintain something conventional," she told me during her interview. She became not just my assistant, but my strategic partner and friend. Despite my company's growing success, reaching $200 million in transactions by our fourth year, the pattern continued at family gatherings. My ideas were interrupted, my achievements downplayed, and my business referred to as my tech project rather than the legitimate enterprise it had become. Last Christmas, my grandfather pulled me aside. "They're afraid," he whispered, his eyes twinkling with something between mischief and pride. "Afraid of what?" I asked. "That you might outdo them all," he replied. "Innovation always terrifies the established." With those words echoing in my mind, I arrived at this year's family business meeting determined to be taken seriously. My company had just secured a significant round of funding, we'd expanded to 3 new markets, and our transaction volume had doubled in 6 months. Yet somehow, I found myself directed to the kitchen instead of the conference room. The morning of the annual Mitchell Real Estate Group meeting dawned bright and clear. I dressed carefully in a tailored navy suit, selected statement jewelry that projected confidence, and rehearsed my presentation one final time before driving to my parents' expansive colonial in Brookline. The property always impressed visitors: 5 acres of manicured grounds, a circular driveway leading to a columned entrance, and 6,000 square feet of old money elegance. Growing up there had been a privilege I acknowledged, even as I chose to forge my own path. I parked my Tesla beside a row of luxury vehicles: my father's Bentley, Jason's Range Rover, and several Mercedes and BMWs belonging to board members. Taking a deep breath, I gathered my portfolio and laptop bag, then walked up the familiar granite steps. My mother answered the door, her blonde hair perfectly styled, her expression revealing a flash of surprise before settling into a practiced smile. "Audrey, darling. We weren't sure you'd make it," she said, air-kissing both my cheeks. "Everyone's gathering in the conference room, but why don't you wait in the kitchen? Martina made those cinnamon rolls you like." I blinked, momentarily confused. "Wait in the kitchen? Mom, I'm here for the business meeting." She adjusted her pearl necklace, not quite meeting my eyes. "Of course, dear. It's just that the agenda is quite full with the Patterson development and Jason's downtown project. We'll call you in if there's time for other updates." The dismissal was so casual, so matter-of-fact, that for a moment I couldn't respond. Through the open door of my father's study-turned-conference room, I could see the long mahogany table with 16 chairs. Board members were already settling in, accepting coffee from staff, exchanging pleasantries. "I have an update on Mitchell Tech's expansion and our new predictive market analysis tool," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "I think the board would be interested in how it could benefit the family business." My mother patted my arm. "That sounds fascinating, sweetheart. Perhaps you can email everyone a summary later?" "Thomas just arrived. I should greet him." She moved swiftly toward the silver-haired chairman of the board, leaving me standing in the foyer. I stood frozen, portfolio clutched to my chest, as board members and executives filed past. Some nodded politely, others seemed not to notice me at all. My brother Jason strode by with 2 senior VPs, deep in conversation about capital allocations. "Jason," I called, stepping forward. He glanced over, continuing to walk. "Hey sis, grab me a coffee if you're headed to the kitchen, would you? Black, 2 sugars." Before I could respond, they disappeared into the conference room. I remained in the foyer, torn between making a scene and swallowing my pride. A confrontation would only reinforce their perception of me as emotional and unprofessional. Yet accepting this treatment felt like betraying everything I'd worked for. Martina, our family's housekeeper of 20 years, appeared beside me. Her sympathetic expression told me she understood exactly what was happening. "I set up the breakfast in the kitchen, Miss Audrey," she said quietly. There's a nice spot by the window where you can work." I thanked her, fighting back tears of frustration as memories flooded back, my father interrupting my college graduation dinner to take a business call. Jason presenting my market analysis research as his own at a family function. My mother suggesting I handle the social media things because I was good with computer gadgets. With forced composure, I walked to the kitchen. The same kitchen where I'd done homework while listening to my father coach Jason on business strategies. The same kitchen where my ideas had been relegated to dinner conversation rather than boardroom material. The kitchen was beautiful, of course, a showcase of marble and high-end appliances featured in Architectural Digest when my mother renovated 5 years ago. But today, it represented my continued exclusion from the business discussions that shaped my family's legacy. I set up my laptop at the island, spreading my portfolio beside it. If they wouldn't invite me to the table, I would use this time productively. I could hear the meeting beginning through the open door down the hall, my father's authoritative voice calling everyone to order, the respectful silence that followed. Sophia, another housekeeper who had known me since childhood, quietly placed a cup of coffee beside my laptop. "They don't see how smart you are," she whispered in Spanish, a language she had helped me practice growing up. "But someday they will have to." I smiled gratefully at her as I opened my email to review quarterly reports. Through the open door, I could hear snippets of the meeting, discussions about market trends I had predicted 6 months ago, development opportunities one had researched thoroughly, and technology integrations I had repeatedly suggested. I was typing notes for my own team meeting later that day when my phone began to vibrate. Megan's name flashed on the screen. "Audrey, I know you're at the family meeting, but this couldn't wait." Megan's voice came through, uncharacteristically excited. As my assistant of 4 years, she typically maintained professional composure, regardless of circumstances. "What's happening?" I asked, lowering my voice and glancing toward the hallway where the meeting continued without me. "Henderson Properties is selling," she said, the words tumbling out rapidly. "The whole company, lock, stock, and barrel." I nearly dropped my phone. Henderson Properties was our biggest competitor in the tech-forward real estate space, a company 3 times our size with an established presence in markets we had been trying to penetrate for years. "That's impossible," I replied. "Frank Henderson has been saying he'll die at his desk since I entered the industry." "Pancreatic cancer, stage 4, Megan said soberly. "Diagnosed 3 weeks ago. He's kept it quiet, but he wants to sell quickly and ensure the company's future while he can still oversee the transition." I walked to the kitchen window, processing this information. "How did you find out before it hit the market? Remember Alicia from graduate school? She's Henderson's HR director now. Called me directly because she knows we might be interested." "But Audrey," her voice became urgent, "this is time-sensitive. Henderson is giving interested parties just 48 hours to prepare offers before announcing publicly. He wants to avoid a protracted negotiation process." My mind raced through implications and possibilities. Henderson Properties had pioneered virtual reality home tours and had an impressive portfolio of exclusive listings. Their client list included celebrities and tech executives who valued their privacy and Henderson's innovative approach. Most importantly, they had successfully expanded into West Coast markets that had been resistant to our entry. "Send me their financial summary," I said, returning to my laptop. "Already in your inbox," Megan replied efficiently. "I've also contacted our legal team to prepare for due diligence if you want to pursue this." I opened the documents, scanning quickly through revenue figures, asset valuations, and market share statistics. Despite my location in my parents' kitchen rather than a proper office, my focus narrowed to the opportunity before me. The numbers were compelling. Henderson's technology infrastructure complemented ours, their market presence filled our gaps, and their client base represented exactly the demographic we had been targeting. Most significantly, acquiring Henderson would instantly make Mitchell Tech larger than my family's traditional real estate business. A fact that registered with both professional satisfaction and complex emotional weight. "What's the asking price?" I asked, though I could see it in the documents. 80 million, Megan confirmed. But Alicia hinted Frank might accept 70 if the buyer commits to retaining key staff and maintaining the company's innovative approach. I did rapid mental calculations. My company had recently closed a funding round of $30 million. We had cash reserves of $15 million. We would need additional financing, but with Henderson's assets and revenue stream, securing it was feasible. Megan, I need you to move quickly, I said, decision crystallizing. Contact Lewis and Chin at Venture Partners to discuss financing options. Have our legal team begin drafting preliminary acquisition documents. Schedule a leadership team meeting for 5 p.m. today. What about your family? Megan asked cautiously. Would Mitchell Real Estate Group want to partner on this? It would reduce your financing needs. The question gave me pause. From the conference room down the hall, I could hear my father's voice explaining why traditional real estate would always outperform gimmicky tech platforms. The same platforms that had revolutionized the industry and that Henderson had leveraged brilliantly. Let's develop our strategy first, I decided. I'll discuss it with them today, but I want our approach clear before involving them. Got it, Megan replied. I'll have everything ready by 5. And Audrey? This could be transformative for us. After hanging up, I stared at Henderson's financials on my screen. This acquisition would not just grow my company, it would legitimize everything I had been working toward. It would prove that my vision of technology-forward real estate wasn't just viable, but represented the future of the industry. I closed the financial documents and opened a blank document to outline acquisition strategy points. My hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the magnitude of the opportunity and the decision before me. From the conference room, I heard laughter following one of Jason's comments. The sound crystallized my resolve. It was time to enter the meeting, not as the daughter relegated to the kitchen, but as the CEO pursuing an industry-changing acquisition. I gathered my materials, straightened my jacket, and walked purposefully toward the conference room. Whether they were ready or not, the Mitchell family business discussion was about to change dramatically. I paused at the conference room doorway, taking in the scene. 14 people sat around the mahogany table my grandfather had purchased when the company first became profitable. My father occupied the head chair, with Jason to his right and Tyler to his left. Board members and executives filled the remaining seats, with notebooks and tablets open before them. My father was mid-sentence when he noticed me. Audrey, he said, his tone suggesting both surprise and mild irritation. Did you need something? All heads turned toward me. I recognized practiced expressions of polite interest that didn't reach their eyes. These were people who had watched me grow up, who had patted my head at company picnics, and who now viewed me as an interruption rather than a colleague. I'd like to join the meeting, I said simply, maintaining eye contact with my father. An uncomfortable silence followed. My mother, seated near the far end of the table, gave a tight smile. Darling, we're in the middle of discussing the Patterson development. Perhaps you could, I understand, I interrupted, something I rarely did with my mother. But I have relevant information to contribute. As a Mitchell and as the CEO of a successful real estate technology company. My father cleared his throat. We're following a specific agenda, Audrey. If you'd submitted your items beforehand, I cut in, pulling up the email on my phone. 3 weeks ago. I received no response. Another awkward silence descended. Thomas Wellington, the board chairman and my father's longtime friend, attempted diplomacy. Perhaps we could take a 5-minute break? Allow Audrey to settle in. My father looked like he wanted to object, but nodded stiffly. As board members stepped out for coffee refills, my father approached me. This is inappropriate, he said in a low voice. These are serious business discussions, not a forum for promoting your little website. The dismissive characterization of my multi-million-dollar company as a little website ignited something inside me. My little website facilitated over 400 million in transactions last year, I replied evenly. And I'm here because I have insights that could benefit Mitchell Real Estate Group if you'd listen. Jason joined us, coffee in hand. Look, sis, we appreciate your enthusiasm. But there's a reason we have an organizational structure. You can't just walk in and expect to understand the complexities of what we're discussing. His condescending tone was familiar, the same one he'd used when explaining why I couldn't join the boys playing business in the treehouse at age 8. But we weren't children anymore, and I wasn't asking permission to play. I understand more than you think, I replied. For instance, I understand that the Patterson development is struggling because your virtual tours are subpar and your online presence is practically non-existent. Jason's expression hardened. That's not your conversion rate from virtual to in-person viewings is below industry standard, I continued. I know because 3 of your potential buyers came to us after being underwhelmed by your digital presentation. Board members were filtering back in, some catching snippets of our conversation. My mother approached, placing a gentle hand on my arm. Audrey, dear, you know we value your perspective, she said softly. But perhaps this isn't the time. You have your own path now. Shouldn't you be focusing on starting a family instead of worrying about our business matters? The suggestion that I should prioritize marriage and children over professional achievement, something never directed at my brothers, was the match to the gasoline. My path, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear, includes running a company that's revolutionizing how real estate transactions occur. And today, that path might include acquiring Henderson Properties. The room fell silent. My father, who had been reviewing papers at the table, looked up sharply. What did you say? I took a deep breath. Henderson Properties is for sale. Frank Henderson has pancreatic cancer and is selling quickly and quietly. I just received word and am preparing an offer. For the first time that day, I had everyone's complete attention. Jason's expression shifted from condescension to shock. My father's brow furrowed in disbelief. That's impossible, my father said. Frank would have called me directly. We've been competitors for 30 years. Traditional competitors, I clarified. My company represents the direction he's taken in recent years. His team reached out to us first. Thomas Wellington leaned forward. Audrey, if this information is accurate, it's significant. Henderson Properties is a major player. I'm aware, I replied. That's why I thought the family might want to discuss a collaborative approach. Mitchell Real Estate Group could partner with Mitchell Tech on the acquisition. We'd gain their technological infrastructure and West Coast presence. You'd expand your traditional portfolio. I pulled up the financial summary Megan had sent and projected it onto the conference room screen. These are preliminary numbers. The asking price is $80 million, though there's flexibility for the right buyer. As board members murmured among themselves, examining the projected figures, I felt a momentary surge of hope. Perhaps this was the bridge that would finally connect my world with my family's. My father studied the screen, then turned to me with an expression I knew too well, the one that preceded dismissal of ideas he considered impractical. This would be reckless, he declared. Henderson has overextended into unproven markets and invested too heavily in virtual gimmicks. This is exactly the kind of impulsive move that tech companies make before they crash. Impulsive? I echoed. I've been analyzing Henderson's business model for years. Their virtual gimmicks increased property values by an average of 12% and reduced time on market by 40%. Jason shook his head. Even if those numbers are accurate, the risk is unjustifiable. We'd be foolish to dilute our resources on this. One by one, board members began nodding in agreement with my father and brother. The familiar pattern was reasserting itself. My insights dismissed, my research ignored, my business acumen questioned. My father turned to Thomas. Let's return to the agenda. The Patterson development timeline needs adjustment. Just like that, the door closed. Not just on the Henderson opportunity, but on any pretense that my opinion held value in this room. So that's it? I said, unable to keep the edge from my voice. You won't even consider the largest acquisition opportunity this family has ever encountered? My father sighed heavily. Audrey, either join the family business properly, learn from the ground up as your brothers did, or accept that these decisions aren't yours to make. You can't have it both ways. The ultimatum hung in the air. Join properly, meaning surrender my company, my vision, my independence, or remain excluded. I gathered my materials with deliberate calm. Thank you for clarifying where we stand. I won't interrupt your meeting further. As I turned to leave, Tyler spoke for the first time. Audrey, wait, but I was already walking out, my mind shifting from disappointment to determination. If my family wouldn't see the value in collaboration, I would pursue Henderson Properties independently. And when I succeeded, they would no longer have the luxury of dismissing me from the table. The drive from my parents' Brookline mansion to my downtown office took 23 minutes, just enough time for my anger to crystallize into resolve. I parked in my reserved spot, straightened my suit jacket, and took a deep breath before entering the converted warehouse that housed Mitchell Tech Real Estate. Unlike my family's traditional oak-paneled offices, our space featured exposed brick, abundant natural light, and an open floor plan designed to encourage collaboration. Engineers, marketers, and real estate specialists worked at clustered workstations, the buzz of productive energy filling the air. Megan met me at the entrance, tablet in hand. Conference room is ready. The team will gather at 5 as requested, but I've asked Lauren from legal and Derek from finance to join us now for preliminary discussions. I nodded appreciatively. This was why Megan had risen from assistant to chief of staff. She anticipated needs before I articulated them. Any update from Henderson's team? I asked as we walked through the office. Just confirmation that they're accepting expressions of interest until Wednesday at 9 a.m. After that, they'll select candidates for due diligence. In our glass-walled conference room, Lauren Barnes, our legal director, and Derek Chin, our CFO, were already reviewing documents. Both had been with me since the early days, taking equity in lieu of competitive salaries when cash was tight. Their commitment had been repaid as the company grew, but their loyalty went beyond financial incentives. I take it the family meeting didn't go well, Lauren observed as I set down my portfolio with more force than necessary. Let's focus on Henderson, I replied, not wanting to dwell on family dynamics. What are we looking at financially, Derek? Derek adjusted his glasses, bringing up spreadsheets on the wall screen. Based on the preliminary information, Henderson's asking price is approximately 4 times their annual EBITDA, reasonable for their market position and growth rate. The challenge, he continued, is that even with our recent funding round, we'd need to secure an additional $35 to $40 million in financing. We're looking at either significant dilution through equity or taking on substantial debt. Lauren tapped her pen against her legal pad. The acquisition itself isn't legally complex. Their corporate structure is clean, and preliminary background checks show no major litigation risks. The financing will be the hurdle. I studied the financial projections Derek had prepared. The combined entity would have a valuation approaching $500 million, more than double Mitchell Real Estate Group's current worth. The thought brought a mixture of professional satisfaction and personal vindication that I tried to set aside to focus objectively. What about venture partners? I asked Megan. Any response from Lewis or Chin? Lewis is traveling, but reviewing the opportunity remotely. Chin is cautiously interested, but wants a detailed integration plan before committing to financing discussions. For the next 3 hours, we dissected Henderson's business from every angle. Their technology infrastructure, client portfolio, market presence, and cultural compatibility. Derek identified potential redundancies and synergies, while Lauren flagged regulatory considerations in markets where we'd be expanding. By the time our leadership team gathered at 5, we had developed a preliminary acquisition strategy. Our CTO, Raj Patel, provided technical assessment of Henderson's platforms. Our marketing director, Gabriela Reyes, outlined brand integration approaches. Our operations head, Marcus Washington, detailed logistical considerations for merging teams across locations. Bottom line, Derek concluded, this acquisition makes strategic sense, but stretches us financially. We'd be leveraged to our limit. The room fell quiet as everyone turned to me for direction. These people had believed in my vision when few others did. They had worked weekends and holidays, accepted delayed paychecks during tough periods, and celebrated each milestone as a collective achievement. Their careers and financial futures were tied to decisions I would make. Thoughts? I asked, wanting their honest assessment before revealing my inclination. Marcus spoke first. It's aggressive, but aligned with our 5-year plan. We were already targeting West Coast expansion next year. This accelerates the timeline but gives us established infrastructure rather than building from scratch. Gabriella nodded. From a brand perspective, Henderson complements us perfectly. They're known for innovation but lack our data analytics strength. Combined, we'd be the clear technology leader in real estate. Raj's assessment was more measured. Integration would be complex but manageable. Their VR platform is superior to ours, but our predictive analytics are more advanced. Technical synergies exist. One by one, team members provided their analysis, all recognizing both the opportunity and the risk. Unlike the dismissive response from my family, these professionals evaluated the acquisition on its merits, regardless of who had proposed it. After everyone had spoken, I thanked them for their input. Please continue developing your departmental integration plans. We'll reconvene tomorrow to finalize our approach. As the team dispersed, I remained in the conference room, staring at projection screens filled with data points, market analyses, and financial models. The rational case for acquisition was strong, but the emotional weight of the decision felt suddenly overwhelming. When everyone had gone except Megan, I finally voiced the doubt I'd been suppressing. Are we overreaching? My family thinks so. Megan considered her response carefully. Your family has built an impressive business through traditional means, but they've consistently underestimated how technology is transforming real estate. That's their blind spot, not yours. She gathered her notes. I'll let you have some space to think. Just remember why you started this company in the first place. Alone in the conference room, I watched darkness fall over Boston's skyline. The doubt that I had pushed aside during the day crept in. Was I pursuing Henderson partly to prove something to my family? Was my judgment clouded by the humiliation of being seated in the kitchen rather than the conference room? My phone rang, displaying a number I immediately recognized, my grandfather Harold. Despite being nearly 80, he had embraced technology more readily than his son. I hear you made quite an impression today, he said when I answered, his voice carrying its characteristic mix of warmth and mischief. That's one way to put it, I replied, smiling despite myself. Your father called me, quite worked up about Henderson properties and your reckless interest in acquiring them. And you agree with him? I asked, bracing for disappointment. A soft chuckle came through the line. Audrey, I've watched you build something remarkable by seeing what others couldn't or wouldn't see. Your approach to real estate isn't just different, it's necessary for the industry's future. His words loosened something tight in my chest. The acquisition would be a stretch financially, I admitted. Every meaningful growth is a stretch, he replied. When your father and I expanded beyond residential into commercial properties, everyone said we were overreaching. Now it's the company's backbone. We talked for nearly an hour, not just about Henderson but about vision, courage, and the future of real estate. By the time we hung up, my resolve had solidified. I texted Megan. Schedule investor meeting for tomorrow. 10 a.m. We're moving forward. Her reply came immediately, already on it. Materials being prepared. I spent the next several hours refining our acquisition presentation, focusing on the concrete benefits for investors rather than emotional appeals. When I finally left the office at midnight, my mind was clear. Whether my family approved or not, I would pursue this opportunity based on its merits and my conviction in our company's direction. Tomorrow would bring either the most significant milestone in Mitchell Tech's journey or a sobering lesson in overreach. Either way, I would face it on my terms, not from a seat in the kitchen, but from the head of my own table. The following morning, I arrived at the office at 6, giving myself time to review presentation materials and center my thoughts before the investor meeting. Our boardroom had been prepared meticulously. Financial projections displayed on screens, acquisition folders at each seat, coffee and refreshments arranged on the sideboard. At 9:30, Megan entered with updates. Chin from Venture Partners confirmed he's attending with their acquisition specialist. Lewis sent his senior partner, Diane Blackwell, in his place. 4 other potential investors have also confirmed. I nodded, making final adjustments to my presentation. And Henderson's representatives? No direct contact, but Alicia confirmed they've received notice of our interest. Their team is reviewing all serious inquiries today. At precisely 10 a.m., our potential investors began arriving. David Chin, whose firm had led our last funding round, greeted me warmly. Diane Blackwell from Lewis Partners was more reserved, her analytical gaze taking in our office environment as an indicator of company culture. Representatives from Horizon Capital, Blue Ridge Investments, and 2 private equity firms completed the group, all established financial players with the capacity to support an acquisition of Henderson's magnitude. As everyone settled, I remained standing, deliberately choosing not to start with slides or financials. Instead, I placed a single house key on the table. Real estate isn't actually about properties, I began. It's about transitions. People moving from one phase of life to another, businesses expanding or relocating, families finding their first home or downsizing after children leave. For generations, these transitions have been facilitated through fundamentally the same process. I picked up the key. But today's clients experience the world differently. They research online before ever contacting an agent. They expect virtual tours before physical visits. They want digital closings rather than mountains of paperwork. Moving to the presentation screen, I displayed side-by-side metrics. Henderson Properties recognized this shift early. Like Mitchell Tech, they built their business model around the client's digital journey. Their West Coast presence complements our East Coast strength. Their luxury market expertise enhances our middle market dominance. For the next 40 minutes, I detailed the strategic rationale, market opportunities, technological synergies, and financial projections of the acquisition. I addressed potential integration challenges honestly, presenting mitigation strategies rather than downplaying risks. When I concluded the formal presentation, the room remained quiet for several moments. David Chin broke the silence. Impressive analysis, Audrey. But the financing gap is significant. How do you propose structuring this without crippling dilution or unsustainable debt? This was the critical question, one I had anticipated and prepared for extensively with Derek. I outlined a hybrid approach, preferred equity investment with favorable conversion terms, contingent earn-out provisions to Henderson's key executives, and performance-based financing tranches that would release capital as integration milestones were achieved. Diane Blackwell, known for her direct questioning, leaned forward. You're proposing to acquire a company 3 times your size. What makes you confident you can manage the integration successfully? 3 times our size in employee count and current revenue, I acknowledged. But our technological infrastructure is more scalable, our per-employee productivity is higher, and our growth rate has consistently outpaced theirs for 3 years. I displayed our integration timeline. We're not attempting to absorb them overnight. This is a measured 18-month process with clearly defined phases and success metrics. The questions continued for over an hour. Challenging, specific, occasionally skeptical, but always focused on business fundamentals rather than personality or perception. Unlike my family's dismissal, these financial professionals were evaluating the acquisition on its merits. As the session concluded, David Chin remained behind while others departed for internal discussions. This isn't a guaranteed yes, he cautioned. But it's a compelling case. We'll have an answer for you by end of day. Throughout the afternoon, Megan provided updates as investors responded. Horizon Capital declined, citing sector concentration concerns. Blue Ridge requested additional technical due diligence, but expressed preliminary interest. At 4:17 p.m., the critical email arrived from venture partners. David Chin and his team were prepared to lead the financing round, contingent on participation from at least one other institutional investor to distribute risk. By 5:45 p.m., Lewis Partners confirmed they would join the financing consortium, and one of the private equity firms indicated interest in a smaller participation. We have the financing, I told my leadership team, who had gathered anxiously in the conference room. Now we need to secure Henderson before they commit elsewhere. The next 24 hours passed in a blur of activity. Our legal team drafted formal acquisition documents. Finance structured the deal terms. Technical teams prepared integration roadmaps. By Wednesday morning, we had assembled a comprehensive offer for Henderson Properties. Frank Henderson had established a reputation for traditional business practices despite his company's innovative approach to real estate. Rather than submitting our offer electronically, I decided to present it in person at Henderson's San Francisco headquarters. "You should be here for this," I told Megan as we boarded the flight. "You've been essential to making it happen." After landing, we went directly to Henderson's offices. Unlike the ostentatious displays of success that characterized many real estate firms, Henderson's headquarters featured practical elegance, open workspaces, modest executive offices, and prominent displays of their technological innovations. Frank Henderson received us in a glass-walled conference room overlooking San Francisco Bay. Despite his recent diagnosis, he maintained the commanding presence that had made him a legend in real estate circles. At 72, his silver hair and tailored suit projected the image of success, though I noticed the slight weight loss and pallor that hinted at his condition. "Mitchell," he said, shaking my hand firmly. "I've followed your company's progress. Impressive growth trajectory." "Thank you," I replied. "Your innovations have influenced our approach." He gestured for us to sit. "Let's dispense with prolonged negotiations. I have less time than I once did. You've submitted a comprehensive offer. My team has reviewed it alongside 7 others. My heart sank at learning we faced more competition than anticipated. 3 were immediately disqualified," he continued. 2 others failed to secure adequate financing. Of the remaining 3, yours presents the most compelling vision for Henderson's future." He slid a document across the table. His counteroffer. The price remained at $75 million, but with adjusted earnout structures and stronger commitments to retain key personnel. "These terms are non-negotiable," he stated. "Not because they're optimal for me financially, but because they protect what I've built and the people who helped build it." I reviewed the document carefully. The terms were aggressive but fair. More importantly, they aligned with our integration strategy and values. "We can work with these terms," I confirmed. Frank Henderson studied me for a moment. "Your family has a storied history in traditional real estate. Brian Mitchell is well respected, if somewhat resistant to change. Why aren't they part of this acquisition?" The question caught me off guard with its directness. "We have different visions for the future of real estate," I answered honestly. A knowing smile crossed his face. "Different visions." A diplomatic way of saying they don't fully appreciate what you've built. Before I could respond, he continued. "I chose your offer not just for the financials, but because you understand where this industry is heading. The Mitchell name will now be associated with both the past and future of real estate." That's a remarkable legacy. 2 hours later, we signed preliminary agreements. By the time Megan and I boarded our return flight to Boston, news of the acquisition had begun circulating in industry circles. My phone filled with congratulatory messages from team members, investors, and business associates. Notably absent were messages from my family. The following morning, the Wall Street Journal published an article about the acquisition, describing it as a significant shift in real estate technology consolidation, and noting that Mitchell's upstart firm has outmaneuvered established players, including her family's traditional real estate business. As media coverage expanded throughout the day, my team celebrated the milestone that would transform our company's trajectory. Amidst the excitement, I maintained focus on the immense work ahead: integration planning, client communication strategies, and organizational restructuring. It wasn't until evening that my phone displayed an unexpected caller, my father. After a moment's hesitation, I answered. His voice carried an unfamiliar tone, something between respect and reconciliation. "Congratulations on the Henderson acquisition," he said formally. "It's impressive." "Thank you," I replied, unsure what else to add. After an awkward pause, he continued. "Perhaps we should discuss how this might create synergies between our companies." The irony wasn't lost on me. The same opportunity he had dismissed days earlier now warranted discussion after public validation. But rather than pointing this out, I simply said, I'd be open to that conversation. Next week, perhaps, after the initial integration work is underway. As I hung up, I felt no vindictive satisfaction, no desire to gloat over changing perceptions. The acquisition wasn't about proving my family wrong, it was about building something meaningful that aligned with my vision for the industry's future. 3 days after signing preliminary agreements with Frank Henderson, I stood before my expanded company at an all-hands meeting in our Boston headquarters, live-streamed to Henderson's offices across the country. Today marks not an ending but a beginning, I told the combined teams. Together, we're creating the most innovative, client-focused real estate technology company in the market. The path forward involves challenges alongside opportunities, but I'm confident in what we'll build together. As applause filled the room, I realized that the real measure of success wasn't the acquisition itself, but what we would create from it, and that journey was just beginning. 3 months after the Henderson acquisition, I stood at the window of our new executive offices, gazing at Boston's skyline. We had relocated to a prestigious building in the financial district, not for the prestige itself, but because we needed the space to accommodate our expanded team. The Henderson integration was proceeding more smoothly than even our optimistic projections had anticipated. Behind me, Megan cleared her throat. "Your grandfather is here to see you." I turned in surprise. Harold Mitchell rarely left his Brookline home these days, preferring family to visit him instead. "Send him in, please." My grandfather entered slowly, leaning on his cane. At 80, his body had weakened, but his eyes remained sharp with intelligence and humor. He whistled appreciatively as he looked around the office. "Quite a step up from that converted warehouse where you started," he observed, lowering himself carefully into a chair. "What brings you downtown?" I asked, sitting across from him. He smiled. "Can't an old man visit his granddaughter without an interrogation? Especially when she's just pulled off the most significant acquisition in Boston real estate this decade." I laughed. "Of course. Would you like some coffee? Tea?" No, he waved off the offer. "I can't stay long. Your grandmother has me on a strict schedule these days, doctor appointments, physical therapy, the works." He leaned forward, his expression growing more serious. "I wanted to congratulate you properly. What you've accomplished, building your company, securing the Henderson acquisition, managing the integration, it's remarkable." "Thank you," I said, genuinely touched. "Your support has meant everything." Harold nodded. "I've lived long enough to recognize vision when I see it. Your father has many strengths, but embracing change isn't among them." He chuckled. "He's coming around, though." The Henderson acquisition gave him quite a shock. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with my father's name on the screen. "Speaking of," I said, showing him the display. "Take it," Harold encouraged. "I'll see myself out. Sunday dinner this weekend." I nodded, accepting the call as my grandfather made his way to the door. "Audrey," my father's voice came through, more hesitant than his usual authoritative tone. "Do you have a moment?" "I do," I replied, watching my grandfather give me a thumbs up before closing the door behind him. "I've been reflecting on recent events," my father continued. "Your acquisition of Henderson was strategically sound. The market has responded positively." Coming from him, this was extraordinary praise. "Thank you," I said simply. "The board is meeting next Thursday to discuss our digital transformation strategy," he continued. "Given your expertise in this area, your presence would be valuable." I recognized what this invitation had cost him. My father wasn't apologizing exactly, but this was his way of acknowledging he had underestimated me. "I appreciate the invitation," I replied carefully. "I'd be happy to attend, though I want to be clear about my role. I'm coming as the CEO of Mitchell Tech, not as a family member seeking approval." A pause followed. "Understood," he finally said. "The meeting begins at 10. I'll have Diane send you the agenda." After we hung up, I sat at my desk, processing the significance of this conversation. It wasn't the full acknowledgement I might have once craved, but it represented a shift in our professional relationship, one based on earned respect rather than familial obligation. The following Thursday, I arrived at Mitchell Real Estate Group's headquarters 15 minutes before the board meeting. The receptionist, who had known me since childhood, did a double-take at my name. "Ms. Mitchell." "It's been ages." "You're here for The board meeting, I confirmed. I'm on the agenda. Her surprise was evident as she checked her schedule. Of course. Let me show you to the conference room. As we walked through familiar hallways, I noticed subtle changes in the office environment, more technology integration, digital displays of property portfolios, even a virtual reality station for property tours. Small steps, but meaningful ones. The conference room fell quiet as I entered. The same mahogany table, the same executive chairs, many of the same board members, but the dynamic had undeniably shifted. My father rose from his seat at the head of the table. Audrey, thank you for joining us. Please, he gestured to an empty chair, not at the far end where visitors typically sat, but to his left, opposite Jason. As I took my seat, I noticed my brother's expression, a mixture of reluctant respect and lingering competitiveness. Tyler, beside him, gave me a subtle nod of acknowledgement. Before we begin the formal agenda, my father announced, I want to acknowledge Audrey's recent achievements. The Henderson acquisition has positioned Mitchell Tech as an industry leader in real estate technology, bringing additional prestige to the Mitchell name in business circles. The acknowledgement was professional rather than warm, focused on business impact rather than personal pride, but it represented significant progress nonetheless. Throughout the meeting, I contributed perspectives on digital transformation, client expectations, and technology integration, the very insights that had been dismissed at previous family gatherings. This time, board members took notes, asked substantive questions, and engaged with my recommendations. When discussion turned to the Patterson development, the same project that had dominated the agenda during my kitchen banishment, I offered concrete suggestions for improving its digital marketing approach. Rather than automatic dismissal, these ideas were noted for implementation. After the meeting concluded, my mother approached. You were very impressive today, she said, with what seemed like genuine surprise. The board was quite taken with your presentation. Thank you, I replied. These are strategies I've been developing for years. She had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. Yes, well, sometimes it takes time to recognize value. Will you join us for lunch? Your father has reserved the private room at Morton's. I considered the invitation. Part of me wanted to decline, to maintain professional boundaries rather than slip back into family dynamics. But another part recognized the opportunity to establish a new type of relationship. I can stay for an hour, I agreed. I have an integration meeting at 2. The lunch was not without awkward moments. Old patterns emerged occasionally, Jason interrupting, my father making unilateral pronouncements, my mother attempting to smooth over disagreements. But there were also new dynamics, my father asking my opinion on industry trends, board members referencing my insights from the meeting, even Jason grudgingly inquiring about Henderson's West Coast operations. As we finished dessert, my father cleared his throat. We've been discussing potential collaboration opportunities between Mitchell Real Estate and Mitchell Tech. Nothing formal yet, but there may be synergies worth exploring. The irony was palpable. This was precisely what I had suggested before being dismissed from the kitchen 3 months earlier. Rather than pointing this out, I nodded professionally. I'm open to discussing possibilities that benefit both companies, I replied. My team can prepare some preliminary ideas for consideration. As I left the restaurant, Tyler walked me to my car. Unlike Jason, who had always been our father's clear successor, Tyler had struggled to find his place in the family business. What you did with Henderson was incredible, he said when we were out of earshot of the others. I've been trying to get Dad to consider technological integration for 2 years. It's easier to dismiss ideas from within the system than from a proven outside success, I observed. He nodded. I've been thinking about that. Would you have time for coffee next week? I have some ideas I'd like to run by you. This tentative bridge between our professional worlds represented perhaps the most meaningful shift of the day. I'd like that, I replied sincerely. Over the following months, the relationship between Mitchell Tech and Mitchell Real Estate evolved gradually. We established limited collaboration agreements, my company providing technological solutions for specific Mitchell projects, their company offering traditional expertise for certain Mitchell Tech clients who preferred hybrid service models. The family dynamics shifted as well. Sunday dinners included business discussions where my input was sought rather than tolerated. My father occasionally called for advice on technology-related decisions. My mother stopped asking when I planned to settle down and instead inquired about my company's expansion plans. These changes weren't accompanied by dramatic apologies or tearful reconciliations. They emerged through consistent demonstration of competence, gradual earning of respect, and mutual recognition of complementary strengths. 6 months after the Henderson acquisition, I hosted my first board meeting as CEO of the integrated company. Seated at the head of the conference table, not a kitchen island, I looked at the faces of executives from both Mitchell Tech and Henderson, now unified under shared vision and purpose. As the meeting commenced, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. From the kitchen of my parents' home to the boardroom of a company I had built. From seeking family validation to finding self-affirmation through meaningful work and principled leadership. The acquisition of Henderson Properties had transformed my company's market position, but the more significant transformation had been personal, the confidence that came from making difficult decisions, the clarity that emerged from staying true to my vision, and the freedom that resulted from building my own table rather than fighting for a seat at someone else's. As we reviewed quarterly results showing successful integration and accelerating growth, I recognized that the most valuable acquisition hadn't been Henderson Properties, but the understanding that external validation, even from family, was less important than internal conviction and purposeful action. When the board meeting concluded, I returned to my office where a simple frame hung on the wall. Inside was the key I had used in my investor presentation. The symbol of transitions that had become something more, a reminder that the most meaningful doors we open are often the ones we create ourselves. Have you ever been underestimated by the people who should have believed in you most? Did you find a way to prove your worth, or did you learn to validate yourself without their approval? Share your story in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe if this resonated with you. Remember, sometimes the people who don't give you a seat at the table are inadvertently motivating you to build something even better on your own terms. Thank you for joining me today.